Man, I really want to try out gaming in 4K. Yo, what's up? Yo, Sheed! So I just got a new GPU and I want to try out 4K gaming, but I'm not sure if it's worth the upgrade from 1440p. Word, I've mainly been gaming at 1440p as well. It's not expensive and it looks great compared to 1080p. But if you do have the money, 4K can be a decent upgrade as well, especially since it has higher PPI. What is PPI? PPI just stands for pixels per inch. And you know what? Let me just show you what it's like to game on a 4K monitor. ASUS is just gifting me one of the first 4K 27-inch 240Hz OLED panels, and I'm excited to try this out. Let's get this thing unboxed. So this is the ASUS ROG Strix XG27UCDMG. That is a mouthful. It's one of the very few 4K 27-inch OLED gaming monitors on the market using the 4th generation QD OLED panel made by Samsung. Both Samsung and MSI have their own monitors that also use this panel. It has some really great features and picture quality and goes for a little bit under $1,000 here in the US, which I know is not cheap at all, but it is competitively priced compared to other 4K OLED monitors on the market. But don't get this confused with its more premium version, the pg27UCDM, which has most of the same specs except it's more expensive at over $1,000 MSRP. The more premium version has other hardware and features like a metal stand and base, Dolby Vision, and DisplayPort 2.1. And to be transparent, this monitor was gifted to me by ASUS, and I'm extremely thankful to be able to try it out and show you guys what it's like to game on a 4K 27-inch OLED monitor. But ASUS has not seen this video before it's going live, so all of these thoughts are my own, and it's going to be my honest impression. Now let's get into some of the facts and specs on this monitor. Again, it's a 27 4K glossy QD OLED panel, which is better in rooms that have less ambient light. It has 166 PPI, or pixels per inch, meaning you get extremely sharp images and clear text, but more on that later. For reference, a 1080p 27-inch screen has a PPI of about 81, and a 1440p 27-inch screen has a PPI of 108. This monitor has a refresh rate of 240 Hz, which is perfect for competitive gaming if your PC is beefy enough to hit those frame rates at high resolution. And as for ports, it has two HDMI 2.1 ports which support 48 gigabits per second of data transfer, one DisplayPort 1.4 version, 3 USB ports, and a 90-watt USB-C port. Personally, I think the 90-watt USB-C port is great for charging devices and connecting laptops to this monitor, but I kinda do wish that it had DisplayPort 2.1 like the more premium version. The main difference between DisplayPort 2.1 and 1.4 is that 2.1 supports a much higher data bandwidth, meaning your PC will be able to send all of its 4K high FPS graphic information directly to your monitor without using what's called display stream compression. Display stream compression is actually some pretty cool tech. It's a feature that many monitors support, and it basically compresses all of the video information coming from your PC while still keeping all of the visual quality, so it's visually lossless. So that means pretty much you won't notice a difference. There has been a ton of research and testing to show that visual difference with and without DSC is nearly indistinguishable, and so far I've been using the monitor and I couldn't tell any difference either. With that said, even though this monitor only supports DP 1.4, you shouldn't have to worry about the image quality or smoothness thanks to DSC. So overall, on paper, I think this is another great option for an OLED gaming monitor. I really appreciate that it's priced similarly to the 32-inch 4K OLEDs as well. It gives gamers like us more flexibility and options because if you don't have the desk space for a large 32-inch panel or find that the increased pixel density in this monitor is really worth it for you, then you can go with this. Okay, but enough about specs. Let's actually get into what it's like gaming on this 4K OLED, and we're going to compare it to a 27-inch 1440p OLED as well, and a 1080p IPS display, so you can actually see the difference in pixel density and understand why it's important and how it affects your gaming experience. Now, I actually didn't own a 1080p screen before this video, so I went out and bought one. It's a really pretty cheap LG IPS display. It has like 100 Hz refresh rate but I got it to show you the comparison. Even though 1080p OLED monitors don't exist currently, and this monitor doesn't have a very high refresh rate, I thought it would still be useful to at least show the difference in PPI and image clarity and detail. So for this testing, we're going to connect all three of these monitors to my gaming PC that has a 5090 and run 3 games: Monster Hunter Wilds, Marvel Rivals, and Helldivers 2. So at first I played Monster Hunter Wilds at 4K, and at first glance I was like, okay, this is looking pretty nice. But right out the gate, I really couldn't tell you the difference between this and the 1440p monitor at first, but this was also the very first game that I played that day, so my eyes were probably getting adjusted. I was looking closely at things like the character model detail, their skin, their hair was amazing. I could nearly see every single strand of hair. I played for about 20 minutes or so, and then I switched to the 1440p monitor. Going to 1440p, I immediately saw the difference, although it wasn't quite as drastic as I thought. At first glance, things looked a tiny bit grainier and blurrier overall, but it wasn't too bad. For example, when I was looking at the hood of my character model, the detail seemed a little bit less sharp, but it was still a good image overall. I played for a little bit more, and then I moved on to 1080p, which, as you probably guessed, I saw a really big difference. I honestly haven't gamed on a 1080p monitor in a while, probably like in my college days, so the difference was pretty drastic. And right out the gate, things were looking pretty blurry and pixelated in Monster Hunter Wilds. Also, this display is definitely on the cheaper end, so it doesn't have great brightness, and the contrast is noticeably worse than on an OLED. But the main reason I added this was to test and show the difference in pixel density, and without even having to get too close to the screen, it is a big difference from 1440p and especially 4K. But don't get me wrong, this is still very playable, and at the end of the day, as long as a game is fun and playable, then that's all that really matters in the experience. Sure, having high quality monitors can help you feel more immersed and enhance the experience, but they definitely aren't necessary. Next up was Marvel Rivals at 4K, a game I play fairly often, and I thought this would be good to show since it's more of a competitive game, has more bold and bright colors, and the character models are a bit more cartoonic. So pretty different from the Monster Hunter Wilds gameplay that we saw earlier. As soon as I got to the menu screen, I was like, oh my gosh, everything looks so smooth. Character models, the text in the UI was super crisp, and I'm gonna show you that side by side. And I also felt more immersed into the environment. I don't know how to quite describe it, but the details in the environment combined with the enhanced sharpness on the character models sort of gelled very well together. I know this game is played in the third person, but I definitely felt like I was in the game, and the details in the environment and my character and the shots and everything, they were real crisp. Then I switched over to 1440p, and this is what I'm used to playing since this monitor has a much higher refresh rate at 360 Hz. At the menu screen with the same settings, things still look great here honestly. Not as much of a noticeable difference as with Monster Hunter Wilds. When I got really close to the screen, I started to see the light between the character model and the white parts show a little bit of jaggedness compared to 4K, but again, the actual in-game gameplay looks great still. Moving to 1080p, I was expecting to see a big difference in this game, but I was actually really surprised that there wasn't too much of a difference here, honestly. In the main menu, if I look closely, yeah, I can see some of the shadows on the character model have a little bit less detail, and the strands of hair are a little bit more pixelated. But overall, especially since this is more of a competitive game, it's really not that bad or important. If that cheaper monitor had a higher refresh rate, I would absolutely play Marvel Rivals on that thing daily. Finally on the list was Helldivers 2, and I started at 4K. I felt like this was a great game to showcase because not only does it have more realistic models and more detail than Marvel Rivals, but it also has plenty of dark areas and contrast compared to the area that we saw in Monster Hunter Wilds. And when I booted up the game and entered the ship, things looked amazing right out the gate. I'm looking at the edges of the character models, and even this person right here, look at how smooth the edges of the model are. I had to look really hard in order to notice any pixelation. Alright, a little bit off topic, but one thing that I really like about this game are the little details that make you feel more immersed in the environment. How relentless the enemies are, how you have to manage your ammo, diving behind cover, etc. And gaming on this display only adds to that immersion. The highlights from the lasers and muzzle flashes look great contrasted with the overall darker theme of some of the worlds. I had a really fun time playing Helldivers on this monitor that I almost forgot to switch to 1440p. Moving to 1440p though, the game overall still looked great, but as I looked a little bit closer, I did notice a bit of jagged edges around the character models. Now this isn't anything that would deter me from playing the game or lessen the experience at all, but I was definitely pleasantly surprised that I could easily pick up on these differences after seeing what 4K was like. And maybe this was just because my eyes were kind of trained to spot these differences at this point since we've done some testing already. And at 1080p, I noticed more jagged edges and aliasing around the character models. The details in the clothing weren't as sharp. Like, what's going on with the helmet here? Some weirdness going on there. And overall, the game just felt a lot more flat in terms of color and detail, which I noticed with objects that were further away and with things like looking at the smoke or other effects. But most of that is probably due to the fact that this isn't an OLED monitor. Also, one cool feature about the ASUS 4K monitor that I noticed is that it actually has a proximity sensor, so it can tell when I'm not at my desk and it'll automatically cut off the screen in order to help prevent burn-in. I think this is actually a really useful feature and something that sets itself apart from other OLED monitors. Along with its other OLED care features, which other monitors also have nowadays, this monitor should really do a good job of mitigating burn-in, but I'll make sure to post any burn-in updates on this channel as well. Speaking of burn-in, someone asked me on my previous video about upgrading to an OLED monitor if all of these differences and advantages would also apply to playing on console. Like, is it even worth it? And the short answer is, heck yeah. Both the PS5 and Xbox Series X will see the same benefits of super fast response times, better motion clarity, and better contrast when pairing it with an OLED monitor like this one. And specifically for this 4K OLED monitor, it was quite a noticeable difference in overall sharpness and detail when I played games on this versus my big screen 4K TV. And again, that's due to the higher pixel density of this monitor. But the graphic quality overall isn't exactly the same as running with my gaming PC, and you shouldn't expect that either. Even though both my PC with a 5090 and my PS5 can run games at 4K, consoles are not as powerful as most gaming PCs, and in order to reach their playable resolutions and frame rates, they actually use aggressive upscaling techniques which degrade the picture quality. Depending on how powerful your gaming PC is, you can run some games at 4K without any or very little upscaling at playable frame rates. So in short, the less upscaling you have, the better your picture quality will be at the cost of performance, while the more upscaling you'll get better performance but less picture quality. Plus with PCs, you always have the option to configure how much upscaling you want to use, and with most console games, you actually can't do the same. I'm not trying to start a war or anything at all. I've gamed most of my life on console, and they are much more convenient and less expensive than PCs, especially nowadays with the inflated GPU prices. Anyways, gaming on this 4K 27-inch 240Hz OLED is probably one of the best ways to game currently, especially with its insane sharpness and image clarity, contrast, and super fast response times. Even productivity apps like Microsoft Word were noticeably better and sharper. I was able to see text a lot clearer on the 4K monitor versus 1440p. But I still in general do not recommend you to get an OLED if you mainly do productive work, because you'd be putting yourself at higher risk of getting burn-in. With that said, I'm not going to sit here and say everyone should just go out and buy this monitor because it'll make gaming so much better, because that's not the case, and especially considering the high price, not everyone can afford that. While I definitely noticed a difference when I was gaming on 4K, I did kind of expect there to be a bigger difference when compared to the 1440p OLED, and maybe this is due to how much I've seen others appreciate gaming at 4K, or maybe I just need to spend a little bit more time with it. Personally, I still think 27-inch 1440p gaming is great. You still have great picture quality and also have the benefit of getting higher frame rates since your GPU doesn't have to work as hard versus rendering 4K pixels. 1080p gaming also has its purpose, being extremely budget friendly and having high refresh rates, but I would stick to getting a 24-inch 1080p gaming monitor instead of a 27-inch one so that you can have a higher PPI leading to a more crisp image. But let me know your thoughts as well. Did you think there was a big difference in looking at 4K in this video? Hopefully I did a decent job of showing the differences between all of the resolutions, and thanks again for watching this entire video. I'll catch you on the next one.